There comes a moment in every life when the noise of the world grows too loud. The deadlines, the bills, the constant scrolling, the silent comparison to others. You try to smile, you try to keep up, yet deep inside there is a heavy weight pressing down on your chest. It is not only stress, it is not only anxiety, it is the quiet ache of feeling lost in a world that never seems to pause. Maybe you have felt it on sleepless nights when the mind refuses to rest. Maybe you have felt it in the middle of a crowded room where laughter surrounds you, but you feel strangely alone. Maybe you have felt it in the mirror, searching for meaning in your own tired eyes. This is the hidden pain of our modern lives. It is everywhere, but rarely spoken aloud. We tell ourselves to be strong, to push harder, to climb higher. Yet even when we reach the next milestone, the next paycheck, the next recognition, the emptiness returns. It whispers, "Is this all there is?" And so we keep running faster and faster without knowing where the race is leading. But what if the real problem is not outside? What if the root of this heaviness is not the job, not the money, not even the relationship, but the way we carry ourselves through life? There is another path, a path not of escape, but of awakening. For thousands of years, the wisdom of the Buddha has spoken directly to this human struggle, not in abstract theories, but in simple truths that touch the heart. Truths about letting go of the burdens we carry. Truths about finding stillness in the middle of chaos. Truths about compassion, about forgiveness, about remembering the peace that was always within us. Tonight, you are not here to collect information. You are here for something deeper. You are here to feel a shift, to hear words that not only explain, but that touch the hidden places of your own experience, to find a doorway out of the prison of endless striving into a freedom that no one can give you and no one can take away. The journey ahead will move through 10 chapters, each one shining a light on a different struggle we face in modern life. Stress, money, relationships, fear, identity, the constant need to prove ourselves. Each chapter will open a wound, but also reveal a medicine. The pain is real, but the solution is closer than you think. These are not just teachings from monks on distant mountains. They are for you, here and now, in your home, in your work, in your ordinary days. You will hear stories that feel familiar, like echoes of your own life. You will be invited into reflection, not as a student being lectured, but as a human being, remembering something you have always known. Step by step, you will see how ancient wisdom dissolves modern suffering. And as you listen, allow yourself not only to understand with the mind, but to feel with the heart. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you already are, beneath the noise, beneath the masks, beneath the weight you have carried for far too long. Let this be the beginning. Let this be the moment you stop running and start listening. Because the answers you have been chasing are already waiting in the quiet space within. And from that space, we begin. For too long, many of us have carried an unseen weight. It sits quietly in the corners of our hearts, heavy but invisible. You might wake up in the morning and feel a dull ache in the chest before the day even begins. You might smile, drink your coffee, go to work, but underneath the surface, there is something unresolved, something that refuses to let go. It is the silent burden of broken dreams, of regrets, of words unspoken. It is the memory of mistakes you wish you could erase, the shadow of what you believe you should have become. The world tells you to be strong. Friends might tell you to move on. Self-help books tell you to let go. But none of these voices explain how. And so the burden stays, pressing on your spirit day after day, whispering, "You are not quite there yet." The truth is, modern life gives us no time to stop and look inward. We are told to keep moving, to achieve more, to climb higher. But in this endless pursuit, we never notice the heavy bags strapped to our backs. Bags filled with resentment, fear, guilt, disappointment. Every year, every failure, every wound adds another stone to the load. And even when you succeed, even when you earn recognition, the stones remain. The applause fades, the silence returns, and the weight feels heavier than ever. Think of it like carrying a backpack you never take off. At first, it seems manageable. A few memories, a few regrets. But as time passes, as life unfolds, more and more is added. At some point, you realize you are no longer walking freely. You are dragging yourself forward. Every step feels harder. Every smile feels forced. You wonder why life seems exhausting, even when nothing terrible is happening. It is because the burden has grown too heavy. We live in a culture that avoids stillness. The moment silence arises, we reach for the phone, the television, the distraction. Why? Because stillness reveals what we have been avoiding. When the noise stops, the burden speaks. It tells us about our fears, our insecurities, our loneliness. And so we drown it with stimulation, hoping it will disappear. But it never does. It waits, patient and unrelenting. This burden takes many forms. For some, it is the memory of a failed relationship, a love that ended with sharp edges still cutting years later. For others, it is the dream of a career that never unfolded, the sense that life passed by without granting the recognition they craved. For many, it is guilt, the gnawing voice that says, "You should have done better. You should have been stronger. You should not have made that mistake." Whatever shape it takes, the result is the same, a heart that cannot rest. Imagine a song that never ends, a melody that repeats itself endlessly in the background. At first, it may even be beautiful, but after years of repetition, it becomes torture. The burden is like that song. It plays again and again in the hidden corners of the mind, reminding you of what you cannot change. And every time it repeats, it steals a little more joy from the present moment. You may look around and think others have it easier. You see their smiling photos, their perfect posts, their apparent success. But what you cannot see are the burdens they carry in silence. The truth is, everyone is carrying something. The only difference is whether they are aware of it, whether they are willing to face it. This is where the wisdom of the Buddha becomes a light in the darkness. He did not teach us to run away from our pain. He did not tell us to cover it with achievements or pleasures. He invited us to stop, to turn toward the burden, to look at it with clear eyes. He said, suffering exists. This simple statement is the beginning of freedom. For many, it feels discouraging to admit suffering. We want to deny it, to prove we are happy, to hide behind smiles. But the Buddha understood that the moment we acknowledge suffering, something begins to change. The burden no longer hides in the shadows. Asterisk, it comes into the light, and in the light, it begins to dissolve. The silent burden is heavy because we resist it. We keep telling ourselves, "I should not feel this way." We scold ourselves for being weak, for not moving on, for still holding the memory. But the truth is, resistance feeds the burden. Every time we push it away, we give it more power. Imagine a ball pressed underwater. The harder you push it down, the more forcefully it rises when released. This is how our pain works. The more we resist, the stronger it becomes. The path of freedom is the opposite. It is not resistance, but acceptance. This does not mean we celebrate our pain or cling to it. It means we look at it with kindness. We allow it to be here without judgment. We say to ourselves, yes, this is my burden. Yes, this is my story. And yes, it is part of me, but it is not all of me. When we allow the burden to exist, it begins to loosen. Like a tight knot that slowly softens under gentle hands, our suffering untangles when met with compassion. The Buddha called this mindfulness. To be mindful is to notice what is here without running away. It is to breathe with the burden, to give it space, to let it speak. And often, when the burden is heard, it no longer needs to shout. In our culture, we are taught to solve problems quickly, but the heart is not a machine. You cannot fix it with tools or shortcuts. Healing is not about fixing. It is about unfolding. It is about creating space where the heart can breathe again. The silent burden is not something to throw away overnight. It is something to understand, to gently release piece by piece until what remains is only the lightness of being. The first step is courage. Courage to pause. Courage to listen. Courage to admit that the burden is there. When you take this step, you are no longer alone in the darkness. You walk the same path that countless others have walked, a path of awakening. And on this path, the weight slowly shifts. What once felt like chains begins to feel like wings. Because in the very place where suffering hides, the seed of freedom is waiting to grow. And as you begin to see this, a question arises. If this heavy burden is not who I am, then who am I really? Asterisk, that question echoes quietly. If I am not the burden, then who am I? For years, we have defined ourselves by our pain. We say, I am the one who failed. I am the one who was left. I am the one who could not. These labels become a cage. They shape our choices, our relationships, even our self-worth. But when we look deeper, we begin to see that these are only stories, not the truth of who we are. A story is powerful, but it is not permanent. It can be told in one way today and in another way tomorrow. Yet beneath the shifting stories, there is something constant, something untouched by the rise and fall of events. This is where freedom begins. The Buddha compared the mind to a clear sky. Thoughts, memories, regrets, and fears are like clouds passing through. Some are dark, some are light, some are heavy with storm. But no matter how many clouds pass, the sky itself remains untouched. You are not the clouds. You are the vastness that holds them. When we realize this, the silent burden loses its power. The heavy weight we thought was permanent begins to dissolve. We see that it is not my burden, but simply passing weather. This recognition is not just an idea. It must be felt. It must be lived. Imagine sitting quietly with your eyes closed. You notice a painful memory arising. Instead of pushing it away, you breathe with it. You allow it to be here, as if you were holding a child who is crying. You do not scold the child. You do not tell the child to go away. You simply hold it with warmth. This is what mindfulness does. It holds our burden gently until the sharp edges soften. Over time, the burden transforms. What once felt like poison becomes medicine. The pain becomes a teacher. It shows us where we are clinging, where we are resisting, where we are asleep. And as we listen, the lesson unfolds. Suffering is not the enemy. Suffering is the doorway. Without it, we would never search for freedom. Without it, we would never awaken. Think of the lotus flower. It grows in the mud and the dark water where no one would expect beauty. Yet from that mud, the lotus rises pure and radiant. In the same way, your suffering can be the very soil from which awakening blooms. The silent burden you carry can become the ground of transformation. But only if you are willing to see it, not as punishment, but as a teacher. Many people misunderstand Buddhist teaching. They think it asks us to deny pain, to detach so completely that nothing matters. But the opposite is true. The teaching asks us to feel deeply, to face reality fully, to meet life without turning away. It asks us to look at the burden directly and to see that while it is real, it is not permanent. It is part of the path, not the end of it. Every tear you have shed has watered the soil of wisdom. Every heartbreak has opened a space for compassion. Every mistake has humbled you, softening the edges of pride. The burden you carry is shaping you, not destroying you. And when you see this, something extraordinary happens. Gratitude arises, even for the pain, because you begin to realize, without it, you would not be here, listening, searching, awakening. This does not mean you enjoy suffering. It means you no longer run from it. You no longer see it as an enemy. You see it as part of the human journey. And in that shift, the chains begin to break. Slowly, the heart grows lighter. You begin to notice moments of ease, like clearings in the forest. A deep breath that feels spacious. A small smile that feels genuine. A moment of connection with another human being, where the burden does not define you. These are glimpses of freedom, seeds of a life not ruled by weight. With practice, these glimpses expand. The more you turn toward the burden with mindfulness, the less it controls you. It is like a shadow in a dark room. At first, it seems terrifying, but when you bring a light, you see it as only a shape on the wall. It cannot harm you. It was never as solid as you thought. And so the journey begins. The silent burden is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. It is the first gate you must pass through on the path of awakening. It teaches you the art of facing yourself. It teaches you the courage to stop running. It teaches you that the way out is not forward or backward, but inward. And once you take that step inward, you discover something priceless. The heart knows how to heal itself. All it needs is your attention, your patience, your compassion. You do not have to fix everything today. You do not have to release every stone in your backpack at once. You only need to begin, to notice the weight, to breathe with it, to trust that with each breath, a little more light enters the darkness. And as the light grows, you realize the burden was never yours to keep. It was always passing through, waiting for the moment you would let it go. This letting go is not a single act. It is a practice, a daily turning toward freedom. Some days you will feel lighter, some days heavier. That is natural. Healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral, bringing you deeper each time. But each turn of the spiral brings more clarity, more compassion, more peace. And as you walk this spiral path, you begin to see others differently. You notice their burdens, hidden behind smiles and polite words. You feel tenderness for them, because you know how heavy the weight can be. Compassion blossoms. You realize we are all walking together, carrying bags we did not choose, longing to be free. And in that realization, your own burden feels lighter still, because compassion transforms not only the other, but also the self. The silent burden that once seemed unbearable becomes a gift of connection. It teaches you to love more deeply, to listen more fully, to forgive more easily. This is the hidden treasure of suffering. It opens the heart. And when the heart is open, nothing is truly heavy anymore. So as we close this first chapter, pause for a moment. Feel your own breath. Notice the weight you have carried, and allow yourself, just for this moment, to set it down. Not forever, not completely, but just for one breath. Feel the relief, the space, the possibility. This is the beginning of freedom. And from this beginning, we move forward into a deeper question. If the burden is not who we are, then what is this I we keep defending? What is the self we are so desperate to protect? And is it possible that this self too is another illusion waiting to be released? We often speak in simple phrases that seem harmless. I am sad. I am not enough. That hurt me. We repeat them every day without question. Yet hidden inside these words is a powerful assumption that there is a permanent I at the center of it all. A solid self who owns every experience and carries it like a badge. This sense of I feels natural, but it is also the root of much of our suffering. For centuries, the Buddha and other wisdom traditions have whispered a radical truth. There is no fixed, unchanging self behind the curtain of your thoughts. What you call me is not a single thing. It is a river of sensations, memories, habits, and emotions, always moving, always shifting. To cling to it as something permanent is like trying to hold water in your hands. The moment you close your fingers, it slips away. Think of your life as a collection of passing moments. As a child, you thought of yourself one way. As a teenager, another. As an adult, yet another. Each version of you seemed real at the time, but where are they now? Gone, dissolved into memory. And even those memories change with time. The face you see in an old photograph does not feel like the same you who exists today. This is because the self is not a thing, it is a process. Yet most of our pain arises because we forget this. We build walls around an identity. We defend it fiercely. We say, "This is who I am," as if carving it in stone. Then, when life shifts as it always does, we feel shattered. A breakup feels like death because it destroys the story of being the one who is loved. Losing a job feels unbearable because it collapses the story of being the one who is successful. Aging feels like failure because it challenges the story of being the one who is strong and attractive. The problem is not the change itself. The problem is our clinging to a fixed self in a world that never stays the same. Imagine trying to fence in a river. You build the posts, you stretch the wires, but the water never stops moving. Day after day, it slips through, reshaping its course. Eventually, the fence collapses under the pressure. This is how it feels when we try to protect an identity. The flow of life will not stop for our illusions. The harder we cling, the more painful the collapse. But what if you stopped clinging? What if you allowed yourself to be like the river flowing, adapting, shifting with each moment? Suddenly, the fear of change softens. Loss is still painful, but it is not destruction. Aging is still real, but it is not failure. Every moment becomes fresh, unbound by the weight of who you think you must be. When you see the self as a collection of passing clouds, you realize something powerful. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. The thoughts, the moods, the identities, they drift through. Some stay longer, some dissolve quickly, but the vast openness that holds them remains untouched. That openness is your true nature. The Buddha taught this not to confuse us, but to free us. He saw that suffering grows from the belief in a fixed self. When someone insults you, why does it sting? Because you believe they are attacking you. When someone praises you, why does it feel so good? Because you believe it confirms you. But if the self is just a collection of passing conditions, then what exactly is being attacked or praised? Nothing solid, nothing permanent. And in that realization, you begin to relax. A grip of every word, every judgment, every fear loosens. You become like the boundless sky, open, steady, untouched by storms. This insight is not just philosophy. It can be felt in the smallest moments of daily life. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Instantly, anger rises. How dare they do this to me? But if you pause and notice, what really happened? A car changed lanes. That is all. The story of me being disrespected is something the mind created. When you see that clearly, the anger has nowhere to land. It dissolves as quickly as it came. Or imagine feeling anxious before a big meeting. The thought arises, I am not good enough. But who is this I? If you look closely, it is just a thought, a fleeting sensation. It does not define you. It is not permanent. It is just a cloud passing through the vast sky of awareness. And when you see it this way, the anxiety loses its grip. You no longer drown in it. You let it drift. This practice is simple, but it requires courage. We are so used to clinging to the idea of a self that letting it go feels terrifying. We worry, if I am not this identity, then who am I? If I am not my story, will I disappear? The answer is the opposite. You will not disappear. You will awaken. You will see that you are not limited to any one role, any one image, any one story. You are larger than all of them. You are the space in which they rise and fall. And from this space, freedom blooms. The whispers of non-self are not cold or detached. They are tender, like a friend reminding you that you are more than you thought. They remind you that you do not need to defend yourself at every turn. You do not need to prove your worth through endless striving. You do not need to be trapped by the past or frightened by the future. You are free here and now in the openness of the present moment. But to live this truth, you must practice. You must notice when you are clinging to identity, when you are defending the I. You must pause, breathe, and ask gently, is this truly me, or is it just another passing cloud? The more you ask, the clearer it becomes. And with clarity comes peace. Because when you are no longer fighting to protect a fragile self, life becomes lighter. Every interaction becomes softer. Every burden becomes easier to release. And in that lightness, you taste the beginning of real freedom. If you listen carefully, you may notice how often the word I appears in your daily speech. I want this. I hate that. I am right. I am wrong. Each phrase builds a wall, brick by brick, until we feel locked inside a prison of self. We believe the walls protect us, but in truth, they keep us trapped. The Buddha invited us to see through this illusion. He taught that the self is like a flame. It burns brightly for a time, but it depends entirely on the wick and the oil. Without those conditions, the flame vanishes. The self, too, depends on conditions. Your body, your memories, your habits, your environment. When those conditions change, the self changes. When they vanish, the self vanishes. There is no permanent flame, no permanent me. This teaching can feel unsettling at first. We want something solid to hold on to, something fixed we can rely on. But consider the alternative. If the self were truly permanent, you would be forever locked in your current state. Every mistake would be permanent. Every pain would be permanent. Every version of you would be frozen forever. There would be no growth, no transformation, no release. The truth of non-self is not a loss, it is a gift. It means you are not bound by your past. It means you are not defined by yesterday's choices or failures. It means every moment is a chance to be new. Think of a river again. You step into it one morning, and the water flows around your feet. You return that evening, and though the river looks the same, the water is entirely different. It has moved on. Life is the same. You are the same. Each day, each breath, you are new. You are not the same person who woke up yesterday. You are not the same person who made mistakes years ago. You are not even the same person who began listening to these words a few minutes ago. You are a river, flowing endlessly, never fixed. This understanding can soften the heaviest burdens. Take regret, for example. So many people carry regret like a stone in the heart. I should not have done that. I ruined everything. That is who I am. But when you see non-self clearly, you realize the person who made that mistake is gone. That version of you no longer exists. You are not the same today. The regret belongs to a ghost, not to you. And if you release the ghost, you release the stone. Or consider fear. You might say, I am an anxious person. I am always afraid. But is that true? If you look closely, you see fear as a wave. It rises, it peaks, it falls. It is not constant. It is not permanent. It is not who you are. You are not an anxious person. You are a vast sky in which fear sometimes appears. When you see this, fear loses its chains. It becomes something you can watch, breathe with, and release. This is the liberation of non-self. It allows you to live with more space, more freedom, more compassion. Because if you are not a fixed self, neither is anyone else. The person who hurt you is also a river, also changing, also shaped by countless conditions. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it helps you see that they too are not permanent villains. They are human beings caught in their own passing storms. When you understand this, forgiveness becomes possible. Forgiveness is not saying, "What you did is fine." It is saying, "I will not carry this story forever. I will not freeze you in my mind as the villain. I see that you are more than this moment, and so am I." This is how compassion grows. Non-self is not cold detachment. It is warm, spacious, and deeply human. It allows us to see beyond the narrow prison of me and you, and into the shared truth of change. Imagine two people arguing. Each one defends their identity fiercely. I am right. You are wrong. The harder they cling, the more the conflict grows. But what if one of them sees through the illusion? What if one of them realizes, this identity I am protecting is not fixed? These opinions I am defending are not me. They are just passing clouds. Suddenly, the fight loses its fuel. The walls begin to crumble. Peace enters. This is the power of non-self in daily life. It does not mean we become passive or weak. It means we become free. Free to listen without defending. Free to change without shame. Free to live without clinging to a rigid idea of who we are. This freedom brings joy. Imagine walking through life without carrying the constant need to prove yourself, without replaying old stories, without fearing the future. Imagine waking up each morning and feeling fresh, unburdened by yesterday's identities. This is possible. It begins by noticing the whispers of non-self. By pausing each time you say, I am this or I am that, and asking, is that really true? Or is it just another passing cloud? Slowly, the prison doors open. Slowly, the walls dissolve. Slowly, you step into the vast openness that was always here, waiting. And in that openness, you discover a peace that does not depend on praise or blame, success or failure, past or future. You discover the peace of simply being, free from the illusion of a permanent I. And yet, even as this peace grows, another subtle challenge arises. Once we loosen our grip on identity, we may still cling to something else, the desperate need to be right. The ego hides here too, disguising itself as certainty, demanding to win every argument, replaying battles in the mind. And so, the journey continues. Beyond the illusion of self lies another layer to release, the freedom that comes not from victory, but from stepping out of the fight altogether. There is a subtle hunger that lives inside us, one that hides more deeply than the need for money or recognition. It is the hunger to be right. On the surface, it seems harmless. We argue over a movie, over a political view, over who left the dishes in the sink. We defend ourselves in quiet conversations or in loud disputes. Yet beneath it all lies a powerful belief. My opinion is me, my view is my worth. And when someone challenges it, it feels as if they are challenging my very existence. This is why conflict can feel so painful, even when the topic is small. It is not about the dishes. It is not about the movie. It is about the fragile self that believes its survival depends on being correct. Think of the last time you replayed an argument in your head. Maybe it was hours, maybe days later. You thought of all the clever responses you should have said, all the ways you could have proved yourself? Why do we do this? Because in our minds, victory equals validation. If I am right, I am safe. If I am wrong, I am diminished. This need to be right drains us more than we realize. It poisons conversations, turning them into battles instead of exchanges. It tightens the heart, making us defensive and closed. It keeps us from listening, from truly hearing the other person, because we are too busy planning our next line of defense. And perhaps most painfully, it isolates us. Even when we win, we feel a hollow victory, because deep down, the heart longs not for triumph, but for connection. The Buddha saw this trap clearly. He taught that clinging to views is one of the most subtle forms of attachment. Just like clinging to wealth or status, clinging to being right binds us in suffering. He said that peace does not come from victory. Peace comes from release. Imagine a heated debate. Two people stand across from each other, their voices sharp, their faces tense. Each one clings to their side as if their life depends on it. Now imagine one of them softens. Their voice lowers. They say, "Maybe I don't need to win this. Maybe peace matters more than proving a point." Instantly, the air shifts. The battle begins to dissolve. The strength is not in crushing the other. The strength is in stepping away from the fight. This does not mean we abandon truth. It means we abandon the ego's desperate need to be the one who is right. We can still share our views, but we share them with openness, not with armor. We listen with curiosity, not with suspicion. We hold our opinions lightly, like a bird resting in the palm of the hand, free to fly away at any moment. When we practice this, we discover a new kind of freedom. No longer trapped by the need to prove ourselves, we can rest in simplicity. Conversations become softer. Disagreements become opportunities to learn rather than wars to win. Even silence becomes easier because we no longer need to fill the air with justifications. Imagine living like this, walking into every interaction without the weight of needing to defend yourself. Imagine the relief of letting go of battles before they even begin. This is not weakness. It is profound strength. It is the strength of humility, the strength of presence, the strength of choosing peace over pride. And the truth is, the world desperately needs this kind of strength. Every day, conflicts erupt because people cannot let go of the need to be right. Families are torn apart. Friendships dissolve. Nations go to war. And it all begins with the small, quiet clinging of the ego whispering, "I must win." But what if, instead, we learn to whisper back, "I do not need to win. I only need to love. I only need to understand." In that moment, the cycle of conflict breaks. We step out of the arena. We drop the sword. And in dropping it, we discover a peace far greater than victory. This peace is not passive. It does not mean we allow injustice or remain silent when harm is done. It means we act from clarity, not from ego. We speak with compassion, not with pride. We seek solutions, not battles. And when solutions are not possible, we seek peace in our own hearts, refusing to let the poison of conflict rule us. The freedom beyond being right is one of the greatest gifts of spiritual practice. It allows us to rest, to breathe, to connect. It allows us to see others not as opponents, but as fellow travelers, each struggling with their own illusions, each longing for peace in their own way. And as we live this way, something extraordinary happens. The heart grows quiet. The endless arguments in the mind begin to fade. The restless need to prove dissolves. And in the silence that remains, wisdom speaks. It whispers truths not of victory, but of connection. Not of winning, but of being whole. To live this way is to taste a freedom deeper than any argument could ever bring. It is to know that peace does not come from being right. Peace comes from being free. Consider how much energy is wasted in the endless struggle to defend our views. We walk away from conversations, replaying them over and over, as if rewriting the script will change the past. We lie awake at night, imagining what we could have said, how we could have delivered the perfect line that silenced the other person. This restless rehearsal is not freedom, it is captivity. The mind becomes a courtroom where we are both lawyer and judge, endlessly proving our case to no one but ourselves. And still, no verdict brings peace. Because the problem was never the argument itself. The problem was our need to win. The Buddha once compared clinging to views to holding on to a raft after crossing a river. At first, the raft is necessary. It carries you across strong currents. But once you reach the shore, to keep carrying, it makes no sense. It becomes a burden. In the same way, our opinions may help us for a time. They guide us, they give shape to our experience. But when we cling to them as identity, when we refuse to release them, even when they no longer serve us, they weigh us down. True wisdom is knowing when to let go. This letting go is not weakness, it is strength. To cling is easy. To release requires courage. Courage to admit we may not know everything. Courage to remain open when the ego wants to close. Courage to choose peace even when the world pushes us toward conflict. Imagine two people standing in the rain, arguing about whether the storm will end soon. Their voices rise, their tempers flare. Meanwhile, the rain keeps falling, indifferent to their debate. What if, instead of fighting, they simply shared the umbrella? They would both remain wet if they clung to pride, but both would remain dry if they chose humility. This is the invitation of the teaching. Stop fighting the storm and start sharing the umbrella. In practical life, this means we pause before speaking. We ask ourselves, am I sharing this from wisdom, or am I defending my pride? We listen not only to the words of others, but to the energy behind them. We hear their fear, their longing, their own fragile need to be right. And in seeing that, we soften. We realize that the conflict is not about truth, but about identity. And when we no longer take it personally, we no longer feed the fire. This practice transforms relationships. A marriage where both partners insist on being right becomes brittle, ready to crack under the weight of pride. But a marriage where one or both can say, peace matters more than being right, becomes resilient. Friendships survive not because arguments never happen, but because compassion outweighs pride. Even strangers on the street, even coworkers in the office, feel the difference when someone chooses understanding over dominance. And the truth is, every time we release the need to be right, we give a gift not only to the other person, but to ourselves. We release the burden of proving. We release the restless rehearsals. We release the endless cycle of victory and defeat. We step into stillness. We rest in clarity. We taste freedom. But the ego does not give up easily. It will whisper, if you don't fight, you will be weak. If you don't win, you will be invisible. Do not believe this. True strength is not in crushing another. True strength is in standing steady in humility, unshaken by insult, uninflated by praise. True strength is a quiet heart. The world tells us to fight for dominance, but the Buddha tells us to step beyond the fight entirely. When we no longer need to be right, we discover something greater than victory. We discover connection. We discover that love does not ask for a winner. We discover that peace is stronger than pride. And as this realization deepens, something remarkable begins to happen. The masks we wear, the identities we cling to, the roles we play, in order to feel important, all of them begin to loosen. We no longer need them. We no longer believe they define us. And so, the next stage of our journey calls us to shed the costumes of identity, to release the masks that have kept us from our truest self. All through life, we wear costumes. Sometimes they are obvious, like the clothes we choose, the way we speak, the titles we hold. Other times they are subtle, stitched deep into our behavior and thoughts. We play the role of the strong one, the funny one, the helpful one, the successful one, the spiritual one. Each role is a costume we put on to be accepted, to be safe, to be loved. And for a while, the costume works. It protects us. It gives us a script to follow. But eventually, every costume becomes heavy. Every mask begins to suffocate. Because deep inside, we know that none of them are the whole truth. Imagine an actor on stage who never steps out of character. At first, the performance is exciting, even rewarding. The audience applauds, the spotlight shines. But what happens when the play ends and the actor cannot remove the mask? The lines that once brought praise become chains. The role that once gave identity becomes a prison. This is how many of us lie trapped in the roles we thought we chose, but which now seem to choose us. We believe, I must always be strong, and so we hide our tears even from ourselves. We believe, I must always be helpful, and so we neglect our own needs, secretly resenting the very people we try to serve. We believe, I must always be the spiritual seeker, and so we chase practices and insights, not to awaken, but to maintain an image. Every identity, no matter how noble, carries pressure. Pressure to maintain the performance. Pressure to keep the mask in place. And in that pressure, the heart grows weary. The Buddha spoke of this with great clarity. He taught the truth of emptiness not as a denial of existence, but as freedom from fixed identity. To understand emptiness is to see that we are not limited to any one role. Asterisk. We are not permanently the strong one or the weak one, the hero or the victim. We are like water, taking the shape of every container, flowing from one form to another. When we cling to identity, we harden ourselves. When we release it, we discover fluidity. This does not mean we lose ourselves. It means we find a self that is larger than any label, a presence that cannot be trapped by words. Think of the times when you felt most alive. Was it when you were performing a role, or when you were simply present? Perhaps it was walking in nature, laughing with a friend, sitting in silence. In those moments, you are not wearing a costume. You were simply being, and that being felt free, effortless, whole. This is the invitation of shedding identity. It is not about erasing yourself. It is about laying down the costumes long enough to breathe, long enough to remember that who you are cannot be contained by any role. This shedding requires courage, because the world rewards costumes. The strong one gets respect. The successful one gets admiration. The helpful one gets approval. To take off the mask can feel dangerous, as if we will lose everything. But in truth, what we lose are only chains. What we gain is authenticity. And authenticity is the soil in which true connection grows. When we drop the mask, we allow others to see us as we are, not as a performance, but as a human being. And in that honesty, love deepens. Compassion flourishes. Trust becomes real. For how can anyone truly love us if they only know the costume? Only when we dare to be seen without the mask can love be genuine. The path of shedding identity is not a single act. It is a practice. It is noticing when you are playing a role, when you are editing yourself to fit a script. It is pausing and asking, what would it feel like to drop this costume, even for a moment? Sometimes the answer is relief. Sometimes the answer is fear. But always the answer is truth. The more you practice, the lighter you feel. Each mask you drop makes space for breath. Each costume you shed brings you closer to the living presence beneath. And slowly, you begin to see that the truest self is not an image to maintain, but an openness to life, fresh in every moment. To live this way is to live awake. When you begin to let go of these costumes, you may feel naked, exposed, even uncertain. For so long, identity has been the shield you carried. Without it, the mind whispers, "Who am I now? What will people think of me? Will I still belong?" These fears are natural. Yet if you stay with them, something surprising happens. The fear passes, and in its place arises a lightness you may not have felt in years. Because at last, you are not performing. At last, you are not editing yourself to match a role. At last, you are free to simply be. This freedom is not glamorous. It does not come with applause or recognition. Often, it looks quiet, even ordinary. But in that ordinariness lies peace. To sit without needing to appear strong. To speak without needing to sound wise. To love without needing to play the savior. These small acts of authenticity are the foundation of liberation. Consider a tree. It does not pretend to be anything other than what it is. It does not wear costumes to impress the forest. It grows, it bends, it sheds its leaves, it stands bare in winter, it blossoms in spring. Its beauty comes from its truth, not its disguise. And so it is with us. The more we allow ourselves to move through the seasons of life without clinging to identity, the more our natural beauty shines. This shedding is also the key to resilience. When we cling to identity, change feels like death. If you define yourself as the strong one, what happens when life brings you to your knees? If you define yourself as the successful one, what happens when failure arrives? If you define yourself as the spiritual one, what happens when you stumble, when anger or doubt returns? Every identity, no matter how noble, will eventually be challenged. But when you release the need to be fixed, change does not destroy you. It transforms you. You bend like the tree in the wind. You flow like water around the rock. You adapt, not by losing yourself, but by remembering you were never a costume to begin with. This is the wisdom of emptiness. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means freedom from being trapped in one rigid form. It means you are open, flexible, alive. It means you are not bound by yesterday's script. And in that openness, true creativity blossoms. When you are no longer imprisoned by identity, you can meet each moment freshly. You can respond with clarity rather than habit. You can choose kindness even when anger arises, courage even when fear whispers, honesty even when the mask tempts you. This is not the freedom of being someone else. It is the freedom of being no one in particular, which means you can be everyone and everything as the moment requires. The heart becomes spacious. The mind becomes quiet. Life feels less like a performance and more like a dance. Of course, the world may not understand. People may expect you to keep playing the role they know. They may be uncomfortable when you change. But remember, their discomfort is not your prison. You are not here to maintain their image of you. You are here to live truly, to breathe freely, to awaken deeply. And in time, your authenticity will become a gift to them as well. Because when one person dares to drop the mask, it gives others permission to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. It softens hearts. It opens doors. It heals. The path of shedding identity is not easy. It asks you to let go of praise as well as criticism, of success as well as failure, of every label that once defined you. But what you discover in return is beyond measure. You discover the peace of no longer pretending. You discover the joy of living without armor. You discover the strength of being real. And in that discovery, you realize something even deeper. The costumes were never who you were. They were only stories. The truth has always been here, waiting quietly beneath the mask. As you take this truth into your heart, you step into the next stage of the journey. Because once we begin to drop the masks, we are faced with another question. How do we meet discomfort, not with avoidance, but with intention? How do we build the quiet strength that allows us to face life without needing costumes, without needing constant ease? The answer lies in the practice of embracing intentional discomfort. The next door on the path of awakening. In today's world, comfort is sold to us as the highest goal. Every advertisement promises ease. Every device is designed to save us effort. We can order food without leaving the couch, stream endless entertainment without pause, escape boredom with the swipe of a finger. And yet, for all this comfort, we are not at peace. We are restless, anxious, fragile. We crave more and more, but feel less than less alive. Why? Because comfort, when clung to, weakens the spirit. It is not that pleasure is wrong. It is not that rest is bad. The danger comes when we avoid discomfort at all costs, when we run from every challenge, when we build our lives around never feeling unease. In doing so, we become prisoners of craving. We lose the quiet strength that allows us to stand steady when life does not go our way. The Buddha saw this clearly. He did not reject pleasure, but he warned against attachment. He taught that clinging to comfort makes us dependent, and dependence makes us suffer. True freedom is not the absence of difficulty. True freedom is the capacity to remain steady, even when discomfort arises. Imagine a gardener pruning a tree. At first, it may look like loss, like something being taken away. But the pruning allows the tree to grow stronger, healthier, more vibrant. In the same way, when we voluntarily step back from comfort, we discover resilience we did not know we had. This is the quiet strength of intentional discomfort. It might be as simple as sitting in silence instead of reaching for the phone. It might be choosing to fast for a day, or to walk instead of drive, or to pause before indulging in a habit. These small acts are not punishments. They are reminders. They remind us that we are not slaves to craving. They remind us that peace does not come from endless pleasure, but from inner steadiness. Consider how often we chase stimulation. We scroll, we snack, we stream, always searching for the next hit of satisfaction. But satisfaction fades quickly, leaving behind only hunger for the next moment. This is the cycle of craving, the endless treadmill of desire. Intentional discomfort breaks the cycle. When we choose to sit with the hunger, with the boredom, with the urge, something extraordinary happens. We realize we can survive without giving in. We realize the craving is just a wave, rising and falling, not a command we must obey. And in that realization, we taste freedom. Freedom from the endless chase. Freedom from the illusion that comfort is the only path to happiness. This practice also deepens our gratitude. When we step back from constant indulgence, we rediscover the joy of simple things. A plain meal tastes rich. A moment of silence feels spacious. A walk in the fresh air feels like a gift. By allowing ourselves to go without, we learn to appreciate what we have. And this gratitude nourishes the heart in a way that comfort never could. But intentional discomfort is not only about small practices. It is also about how we face the inevitable difficulties of life. Loss, illness, disappointment, these are not optional. They will come, no matter how carefully we build our walls of comfort. The question is not whether we will face them, but whether we will be ready. And readiness comes from practice. When we train ourselves to meet small discomforts with mindfulness, we build the strength to meet larger ones with courage. Just as muscles grow stronger when challenged, the heart grows resilient when it practices facing difficulty without running away. This is not about glorifying suffering. It is not about seeking pain for its own sake. It is about recognizing that avoidance weakens us, while presence empowers us. To sit with discomfort is to train the mind to remain open in all conditions. It is to learn that peace is not the absence of pain, but the ability to breathe through it. Think of a candle in the wind. If the flame is weak, the wind will extinguish it. But if the flame is strong, the wind only makes it dance more beautifully. Intentional discomfort strengthens the flame of the heart. It allows us to face the winds of life not with fear, but with grace. This strength is quiet. It does not boast. It does not show itself in muscles or metals. It shows itself in the calmness of breath during crisis, in the steadiness of heart during loss, in the compassion that remains even when the world feels harsh. This is the strength the Buddha pointed to, the strength of a mind free from craving, a heart free from fear. To practice intentional discomfort is to choose freedom over dependence, resilience over fragility, depth over shallow ease. It is to walk a path that may feel challenging at first, but that leads to a peace far greater than comfort could ever offer. The beauty of intentional discomfort is that it does not require grand gestures. It begins in small choices: waking up a little earlier to sit in silence, taking a cold shower when every cell in your body craves warmth, walking when it would be easier to drive, saying no to an unnecessary indulgence, not because it is evil, but because you want to remember your freedom. Each choice is like a stone placed carefully in the foundation of resilience. Each act is a reminder that you are stronger than your cravings, steadier than your impulses, freer than your habits. Over time, these small practices create a quiet confidence. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to know that when difficulty comes, you will not collapse. You will bend, but you will not break. This confidence is not arrogance. It is not pride. It is the humble knowledge that you have faced yourself and found strength within. And this strength is not only for you. It ripples outward. When others see you remain calm in discomfort, they feel calmer too. When they see you choose patience instead of instant gratification, they feel encouraged. When they see you hold steady in crisis, they find hope in their own capacity. Intentional discomfort, practiced with mindfulness, becomes an act of compassion. It strengthens not only your heart, but also the hearts of those around you. Consider a parent raising children in a world of endless distraction. If the parent cannot sit still, cannot resist craving, cannot face difficulty, what will the children learn? But if the parent models resilience, turning off the screen, pausing before reacting, meeting stress with breath, the children learn by example. They learn that peace is possible, even in discomfort. They learn that strength is quiet, not loud. They learn that freedom is found not in avoiding pain, but in meeting it with courage. This is how intentional discomfort becomes a gift passed from one heart to another, shaping families, friendships, and communities. But perhaps the greatest gift of all is how it changes our relationship with ourselves. So often, we run from discomfort because we fear what we will find if we sit still. The loneliness, the sadness, the unresolved pain. Yet when we choose to meet discomfort voluntarily, we learn a different truth. We learn that our inner world is not as frightening as we thought. We learn that we can sit with loneliness without drowning. We learn that we can face sadness without collapsing. We learn that we can breathe with pain, and in breathing, discover peace within it. This discovery is profound. It changes the way we live. No longer afraid of discomfort, we become fearless. No longer chained to pleasure, we become free. No longer dependent on circumstances, we become steady. And in that steadiness, we find joy, not the fragile joy of fleeting pleasure, but the deep joy of inner freedom. The Buddha once said that craving is the root of suffering. Intentional discomfort is the practice of loosening craving's grip. Each time we refrain from indulging, each time we sit with unease, each time we breathe through longing, we cut a thread from craving's net. Slowly, the net unravels. Slowly, we step out into freedom. This does not mean life becomes easy, but it does mean life no longer controls us. We can face difficulty with openness. We can enjoy pleasure without clinging. We can walk through change without fear. This is the quiet strength that no storm can shake. And as this strength grows, we begin to see the deeper truth that even our search for legacy, our desire to leave a lasting mark, is another form of clinging. Just as we cling to comfort, we cling to permanence. We want to be remembered, to leave behind a name that echoes through time. But the teaching reminds us, true freedom is not in what we leave behind, but in how fully we live this very breath. Which leads us to the next step on this journey, to release the craving for legacy, and to discover the imprint that matters most, the imprint of presence, compassion, and awareness in the here and now. From the time we are young, the world whispers a message into our ears. Make something of yourself. Build a name. Leave a mark. Create a legacy that proves you were here. Parents, teachers, leaders, even culture itself repeats this refrain until it becomes a quiet command in the back of the mind. And so we spend our lives reaching, striving, climbing, not only for success, but for significance. We want to know that our time on this earth mattered. We want to be remembered. Yet this longing, though natural, often becomes another chain around the heart. The craving for legacy pulls us out of the present moment and into a future that never arrives. We imagine how history will see us, how family will speak of us, how our work will endure. But in chasing that imagined echo, we forget the living breath, the heartbeat of now. The Buddha spoke of this with a profound teaching. Die before you die. It may sound dark, but it is not. It is liberating. To die before you die means to release the ego's desperate need for permanence before the body itself dissolves. It means to stop clinging to the illusion that only a lasting mark makes life meaningful. Instead, meaning is found here, in the simple act of awareness, in the compassion you bring to this moment, in the love you offer without guarantee of memory. Imagine a master artist creating a mandala of colored sand. For days, the design grows more intricate, more beautiful. And then, when it is complete, the artist sweeps it away. Nothing remains but the memory of the gesture, the presence of the act itself. The value was never in the permanence. The value was in the fullness of creation, in the presence of each grain of sand laid with care. In the same way, the deepest imprint we leave is not in stone or in books, not in buildings or in monuments, but in how we live each moment with awareness and compassion. Legacy is not measured in years remembered, but in the quality of presence we bring to each encounter. Think of the time someone touched your life in a way you will never forget. Perhaps it was a stranger's kindness, a teacher's encouragement, a friend's listening ear. They may not even know the impact they had. They may never be remembered in history books. But for you, the moment mattered deeply. That is the true imprint, an imprint beyond legacy, an imprint woven into the fabric of living hearts. When we cling to legacy, we burden ourselves with impossible weight. We measure our lives by how much we will leave behind, and in doing so, we miss the miracle unfolding right now. We forget that the only place we ever truly live is here, in this breath, in this step, in this exchange. To release legacy is not to give up meaning. It is to find meaning where it always was, right here. It is to discover that the mark you leave is not in what survives you, but in how fully you show up to the life in front of you. This is a radical shift because it means you are free. You no longer need to fear being forgotten. You no longer need to chase immortality in achievements. You can live fully, love deeply, serve quietly, knowing that the act itself is complete. Nothing more is needed. This freedom allows us to savor life as it is, not as we want it to be remembered. The sunrise is enough, even if no one writes about it. The kindness is enough, even if no one thanks you. The breath is enough, even if it disappears the next moment. To live this way is to live light, unburdened by the heavy armor of legacy. It is to taste the sweetness of impermanence, to know that beauty lies not in lasting forever, but in shining fully while it lasts. When we let go of the craving for legacy, we step into a new kind of freedom. We stop asking, "How will I be remembered?" and begin asking, "How am I living right now?" The focus shifts from the distant future to the living present. This shift is not small, it is everything. It changes the way we work, the way we love, the way we breathe. Imagine an artist painting not for galleries, not for fame, not for history, but simply for the joy of the brush on the canvas. Each stroke becomes alive. Each color vibrates with presence. The art may never hang in a museum, but in that moment, it fulfills its purpose. Now imagine living your life the same way, speaking not for reputation, but for truth, helping not for recognition, but for compassion, breathing not for survival, but for awareness. Suddenly, every act becomes sacred, no matter how small. Washing the dishes becomes a meditation. Holding a child becomes a miracle. Sitting in silence becomes enough. This is the imprint beyond legacy, the imprint of presence. But this presence is not easy to hold. The ego will resist. It will whisper, "You are wasting your life if you are not building something that lasts. You must leave a mark. You must be remembered." Do not believe this voice. It is the same voice that keeps you chained to craving, chained to fear, chained to endless striving. The truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not your name, not your work, not even the earth itself. To cling to permanence in a world of impermanence is to guarantee suffering. But to align with impermanence is to discover peace. The Buddha compared life to a bubble on the surface of water. It forms, it shines, it bursts. We cannot stop this, but we can marvel at the bubble while it lasts. We can see its beauty without demanding it remain. This is how we live when we release legacy, in wonder, in gratitude, in freedom. And paradoxically, when we stop clinging to legacy, we often leave the deepest imprints of all, because presence touches hearts more than monuments ever could. A monument may crumble, but kindness lives on in the people it touches. A building may fall, but compassion shapes generations. A name may be forgotten, but the ripple of awareness continues long after the moment has passed. This ripple is beyond our control. We cannot measure it, we cannot predict it, we cannot own it. And that is precisely why it is free. Our task is not to ensure the ripple survives. Our task is simply to drop the stone of presence into the water, to live each moment with clarity and love, and to trust that the ripple will flow where it is meant to flow. When we embrace this way of living, death itself loses its sting. Because if the meaning of life is not in legacy, then death does not erase it. Life is complete in each breath. Nothing more is needed. To die before you die is to see this truth now, while you are alive, and in seeing it, to be liberated. You no longer fear being forgotten, because you understand you were never here to be remembered. You were here to live, to awaken, to love. And that is enough. As you hold this truth in your heart, you prepare for the next step in the journey. Because even as we let go of legacy, even as we release the need to be remembered, there remains another subtle trap. Taking life too personally, reacting to every word, every criticism, every misunderstanding as if it defines us. But what if insults, like accidents, have no one behind them? What if most of what wounds us was never truly aimed at us at all? To see this is to step into the freedom of the empty boat. There is an old Zen story. A man rows his boat across a misty lake. Suddenly, another boat crashes into his. His anger rises instantly, his face flushes, His voice sharpens. How dare you? Can't you see where you're going? But then he looks closer. The other boat is empty, drifting aimlessly with the current. In that moment, his anger collapses. There was no one to blame. No insult, no enemy. Just an accident. Just life. This story is called The Empty Boat, and it carries a profound teaching. Most of what happens to us is like that empty boat. Someone cuts us off in traffic. A colleague speaks sharply. A friend forgets to call. Immediately, we take it personally. We think, they disrespected me. They hurt me. They don't care about me. But what if, like the empty boat, their actions are not about us at all? What if they were simply drifting in their own currents, lost in stress, pain, habit, or confusion? When we see this, our anger softens. The insult no longer pierces as deeply. The criticism no longer lingers like poison, because we realize it was never truly aimed at us. How much suffering could we release if we stopped taking things so personally? How many sleepless nights? How many silent grudges? How many broken relationships are born not from the event itself, but from the story we attach to it? Someone's words sting, but it is our interpretation that makes the wound bleed. We replay it, we magnify it, we weave it into a tale of our worth. And so the passing comment becomes a heavy burden. The Buddha taught that the ego is like dry grass. Every spark becomes a fire. But when the grass is gone, sparks cannot ignite. In the same way, when the self is fragile, every word feels like an attack. But when the self is spacious, when we see through its illusion, words pass by like leaves floating on a stream. They touch the surface, but they do not sink. This does not mean we become numb. It does not mean we stop feeling. It means we stop inflating. We stop turning every slight into a story about who we are. We stop giving insults a home in our hearts. Imagine someone hands you a heavy package, but you never take it. You leave it in their hands. Who carries the weight? Not you. This is the practice of the empty boat. To let words and actions pass without picking them up, without making them up, without making them yours. This practice brings immense peace. Suddenly, life feels lighter. Conversations are easier. Conflicts dissolve before they begin. Because when you do not cling to insult, it cannot cling to you. Of course, the ego will resist. It will whisper, if you don't defend yourself, you will be weak. If you don't fight back, you will be crushed. But the truth is the opposite. To take everything personally is weakness. It makes you fragile, at the mercy of every passing word. To release is strength. It makes you steady, untouchable, like the open sky. Think of the sky. Storms come, winds howl, lightning flashes. Yet the sky remains vast, unchanged. The storms pass through, but they do not stain the sky. When you embody this, you discover a peace that no insult can shatter, no misunderstanding can disturb. This is the freedom of the empty boat. To live with the wisdom of the empty boat is to recognize how much of our suffering is optional. Someone may throw words like stones, but whether we catch them and hold them is up to us. If we let them fall, they remain only sounds, empty vibrations in the air. But if we clutch them tightly, they become weapons that wound us again and again. The choice is always ours. This practice does not mean we ignore harm or deny responsibility. If someone acts unjustly, we can address it. If a boundary is crossed, we can set it firmly. But we do so from clarity, not from ego. We respond, not react. We act, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. In this way, we protect ourselves without imprisoning ourselves in resentment. Imagine a workplace where criticism is given. If the ego is strong, every word feels like an attack. They don't respect me. They don't see my value. The heart hardens, the mind closes. But if you hold the spirit of the empty boat, you listen differently. You hear the useful part. You discard the rest. You ask, is there truth here I can learn from? And if not, can I let it drift away without carrying it? Suddenly, the criticism loses its sting. It becomes either a lesson or nothing at all. The same is true in relationships. So many arguments begin not with real harm, but with imagined insult. A tone of voice, a forgotten text, a distracted glance. We take it personally, we build a story, and before long, a small misunderstanding becomes a storm. But if we pause, if we remember the empty boat, we ask, maybe this is not about me. Maybe they are tired. Maybe they are stressed. Maybe they are lost in their own story. And in that pause, compassion enters. The storm dissolves before it begins. This is the power of not taking life so personally. It opens space for understanding, for forgiveness, for peace. The Buddha once said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal. You burn yourself before you throw it. How many coals have we carried, believing they were weapons against others, while all the while they burned our own hands? To release anger is not to excuse the wrong. It is to drop the coal, to free ourselves from the burn. The empty boat reminds us, much of what we fight against was never aimed at us. People act from their own wounds, their own fears, their own ignorance. To take it personally is to misunderstand. To see it clearly is to step into freedom. And when we live this way, something shifts. Life feels less heavy. Conversations feel less sharp. Encounters with strangers feel less threatening. We discover that we do not need to defend ourselves against every ripple of the world. We can float, steady and light, like a boat carried gently by the current. This freedom is not cold detachment. It is warm clarity. It allows us to love more deeply, because we are no longer entangled in endless stories of offense. We can see others as they are, fragile, struggling, human, without making their struggles our prison. And in that clarity, compassion blossoms. The empty boat is not only a story, it is a way of living. It teaches us to let go of needless battles, to release unnecessary pain, to rest in spaciousness. And as we rest in that spaciousness, we prepare for the next step in the journey. Because even if we stop taking things personally, even if we release insult and misunderstanding, there still remains a deeper hunger, the endless desire for more. To face that hunger, we must turn toward the teaching of the cup and learn that true peace is found not in endless filling, but in knowing when enough is enough. There was once a monk who owned a simple porcelain teacup. To anyone else, it looked ordinary, fragile, unremarkable. Yet to the monk, it was a treasure. He drank from it every day, held it carefully, admired its smooth surface and delicate curve. One morning, the cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. For a moment, sorrow rose in his heart. Then he smiled gently and whispered, "Of course." The cup was already broken. This story has been told for centuries because it carries a truth we often forget. Everything we love, everything we cling to, is already fragile, already passing, already broken in time. We may try to hold tightly, to protect, to preserve, but eventually, all things slip away. Wealth fades, bodies age, relationships change, objects break. The more we demand permanence, the more suffering we invite. The monk's wisdom was not about despair. It was about freedom. By remembering the cup was already broken, he loved it more deeply. Every sip became precious, every glance a gift. He did not cling to its survival, so he could fully enjoy its presence. This is the teaching of enough. In our modern world, the cup never feels full. We pour in possessions, experiences, achievements, but the craving continues. We scroll endlessly, shop endlessly, work endlessly, seeking satisfaction that never seems to last. Our cups overflow, yet our hearts feel empty. Why? Because the problem is not that the cup is too small. The problem is that we forget to notice when it is already full. The Buddha taught that craving is endless. No amount of wealth, no amount of praise, no amount of pleasure can satisfy it for long. Each desire fulfilled gives birth to another. Like drinking salt water, the more we consume, the thirstier we become. But when we practice contentment, when we say, "This is enough," peace blossoms. Enough does not mean resignation. It does not mean we stop growing or stop creating. It means we recognize the difference between need and craving. It means we see the richness of what is already here. Imagine eating a meal with mindfulness. Each bite savored, each flavor noticed. Even simple food becomes a feast. Now imagine eating distractedly, rushing, scrolling, thinking of what comes next. Even the most lavish meal feels unsatisfying. The difference is not in the food. The difference is in the heart's presence. In the same way, our lives feel empty not because we lack, but because we do not pause to notice the fullness already here. The smile of a loved one, the warmth of sunlight on the skin, the breath moving in and out without effort. These are treasures, already present, already enough. To embrace the teaching of the cup is to live with gratitude. Gratitude transforms ordinary moments into miracles. It reminds us that nothing is owed, everything is a gift. It shifts the heart from restless craving to gentle appreciation. And in that appreciation, joy arises, not the fleeting joy of acquisition, but the steady joy of presence. This practice also softens our fear of loss. When we remember that the cup is already broken, we stop clinging so desperately. We stop living in fear of the inevitable. We love more deeply, not less. Because we know each moment is fragile, we hold it with care. Because we know each meeting may be the last, we speak with kindness. Because we know each breath is a miracle, we breathe with awareness. This is not sadness, it is awakening. It is learning to live fully in the face of impermanence. When we live with the awareness that the cup is already broken, life takes on a different texture. The small annoyances lose their sharpness. The urgency to accumulate fades. We begin to see clearly. Joy is not in adding more, but in recognizing enough. Yet the world around us constantly screams the opposite. Advertisements whisper, "You are incomplete until you buy this." Social media shouts, "Your life should look like this." Culture insists, more is better. Bigger is better. Lasting is better. And so we chase endlessly, filling our cups until they spill, never pausing to taste the richness already present. The practice of enough is a quiet rebellion against this tide. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It is a whisper in the heart that says, "This moment is whole." Enough is the freedom to stop running. Enough is the peace of resting in what is here. Enough is the clarity of knowing that impermanence does not steal value, it gives value. Think of holding a flower. If it bloomed forever, would you marvel at it the same way? It is beautiful precisely because it fades. Its impermanence makes it precious. In the same way, every moment is precious because it will never return. Every relationship, every breath, every glance is fleeting and therefore sacred. When we cling, we miss this. We grasp so tightly, trying to preserve, that we crush the very beauty we wanted to hold. But when we accept impermanence, when we see the cup is already broken, we relax. We hold gently. We savor fully. We let go gracefully. This is the balance the Buddha taught, not indulgence, not deprivation, but the middle way of enough. It asks us to question, how much is truly needed for peace? How much is truly needed for joy? Often, the answer is far less than we imagined. Enough is not a number. It is a state of heart. It is the moment you exhale and realize you do not need more to be whole. It is the smile that comes when you see that life, in all its fragility, is already complete. And here lies the paradox. When we stop demanding permanence, when we stop clinging for more, we are finally free to love without fear. Because if the cup is already broken, we can drink deeply while it lasts. We can love fully, knowing loss will come. We can live fully, knowing death will come. Impermanence is not the thief of joy, it is the teacher of joy. It reminds us to be present, to be grateful, to be alive. And so, as we close this chapter, we carry forward the wisdom of the cup, to see enough, to love enough, to live enough. From this place of gentle contentment, we are ready to face another truth. Because even when we learn to let go, even when we find gratitude in impermanence, the storms of life still come. Chaos still shakes us, losses still wound us, suffering still arrives at our door. The question then becomes, how do we find peace not only in quiet moments, but in the very heart of chaos itself? Life does not always unfold gently. There are moments when the ground shakes beneath us, when everything we thought was stable falls apart. A sudden illness, a job lost, a relationship ending, a tragedy we never saw coming. These storms arrive without warning, and when they do, we are thrown into chaos. The mind races, the heart aches, the body tightens. We search for control, but control slips through our fingers like sand. In these moments, peace can feel impossible. How can we rest when the world itself is trembling? The Buddha understood this. He never promised a life without storms. What he offered was a way to remain steady within them. He taught that peace is not the absence of chaos. It is the ability to remain centered in the very heart of it. Imagine the eye of a hurricane. Around it, winds roar, debris flies, destruction spreads. But at the center, there is stillness, a calm circle untouched by the storm. The practice of peace is learning to rest in that center, not by escaping the storm, but by finding the stillness that exists within it. How do we find this stillness? It begins with the breath. In chaos, the mind wants to scatter in 1,000 directions, regretting the past, fearing the future, rehearsing worst-case scenarios. But the breath is always here, always now. When we return to it, we anchor ourselves in the present. We cannot control the storm, but we can breathe in this moment. We can soften the body. We can release one small layer of tension. One breath at a time, we find the center. This is not denial. It is not pretending the storm is not real. It is choosing not to be swept away. It is remembering that even in pain, even in fear, there is a place of awareness that remains steady. The Buddha called this equanimity. Equanimity is not indifference. It does not mean we stop caring. It means we care without being consumed. It means we feel without drowning. It means we act with clarity, not with panic. Think of a tree in the wind. If its roots are shallow, the storm topples it. But if its roots are deep, it bends and sways, yet remains standing. Equanimity is the deep rooting of the heart. It allows us to bend without breaking, to feel the storm without losing ourselves in it. This practice is not easy. When loss comes, when grief strikes, when fear rises, the instinct is to resist, to fight, to cling. But resistance only fuels the chaos. The more we fight what is, the more power it gains. The path to peace begins with acceptance. Acceptance does not mean we like the storm. It does not mean we stop seeking shelter or solutions. It means we stop wasting energy denying reality. We say, yes, this is happening. Yes, this is painful. And yes, I can still breathe here. In that simple act, a doorway opens. Acceptance becomes space. Space becomes calm. Calm becomes clarity. And clarity becomes the seed of peace. When we learn to sit in the heart of chaos with acceptance, we begin to see something remarkable. The storm that once seemed only destructive also carries hidden gifts. Grief deepens compassion. Fear sharpens presence. Loss reveals what truly matters. It is not that suffering is good, but that suffering can become a teacher when we meet it with awareness. Think of the lotus once more. Its roots grow in muddy water, yet from that mud rises a blossom pure and radiant. The mud is not separate from the flower. It is the very condition that makes it possible. In the same way, chaos can nourish wisdom if we allow it to. Every challenge becomes a chance to deepen our roots. Every storm becomes a practice in remembering the eye of stillness within. This is why the Buddha taught not only mindfulness and quiet meditation, but mindfulness in the midst of daily life. Anyone can feel calm on a silent mountaintop. The true practice is to carry calm into the noise of the marketplace, into the heat of an argument, into the weight of grief. It is in the chaos that the practice matters most. And here lies the paradox. The more we resist chaos, the more it consumes us. But the more we embrace it, the more space we find within it. Peace does not mean the storm ends. Peace means the storm no longer owns us. This is the strength of equanimity. It is not passive. It does not mean we sit still while life crumbles. It means we respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. It means we choose compassion over rage, clarity over panic, presence over despair. From this space, even in the darkest times, a quiet light shines. And when others see this light, they too are comforted. Your calm becomes their calm. Your steadiness becomes their shelter. This is how inner peace ripples outward, touching lives far beyond your own. Perhaps you have seen it a nurse in an emergency room, steady in crisis. A parent holding a child through tears, patient and present. A friend sitting silently beside another's grief, offering nothing but presence. These moments are the eye of the storm made visible. They remind us that peace is possible, even here, even now. To live this way is to embody the heart of the teaching. Chaos is inevitable, but suffering is not. The world will bring storms, but the mind can remain free. And when the storm passes, as it always does, we emerge not broken, but stronger, deeper, more awake. As we carry this wisdom forward, we prepare for the final step of the journey. Because beyond the storms, beyond the practice of equanimity, lies the ultimate truth the Buddha pointed to, the end of clinging, the end of illusion, the great release of nirvana. All along this path we have faced burdens, identities, conflicts, cravings, fears, and storms. Each step has been a letting go, a loosening of the grip that keeps us bound. And now we arrive at the final doorway, the release into nirvana, the great peace that lies beyond clinging. The word nirvana has been surrounded by mystery, but at its heart it is simple. It means blowing out like the flame of a candle when the wind gently touches it. What is blown out is not life itself, but the fires of craving, aversion, and ignorance, the three poisons that fuel suffering. When the fires go out, what remains is not emptiness, but freedom. This freedom is unlike anything the ego can imagine. The ego thinks in terms of gain and loss, of victory and defeat. It asks, what will I have if I let go? What will I become? But nirvana is not about gaining or becoming. It is about releasing. It is about discovering that what you sought was here all along, hidden beneath the grasping. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack up a mountain. You struggle, you sweat, you strain. Then, at the peak, you take it off. Suddenly, the same path feels light, the same air feels fresh, the same view feels limitless. Nirvana is the setting down of the pack. The world remains, but the weight is gone. To taste nirvana is to discover that peace does not depend on circumstances. It is not found in possessions, in achievements, in approval. It is found in the end of clinging. The Buddha compared it to crossing a river. We cling to one shore, our desires, our fears, our identities, and we long for the other shore where peace awaits. The teachings are the raft that carry us across. But once we reach the far shore, even the raft must be left behind. Nirvana is the stepping onto solid ground, free from the endless crossing. But how do we approach this release? The path is not a mystery. It has been laid out clearly. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, the Noble Eightfold Path. These are not rules to follow mechanically. They are practices that slowly untangle the knots of clinging. Each step loosens the grip of craving. Each practice opens the hand of attachment. And with every loosening, every opening, the flame of suffering burns smaller. Many people think nirvana is distant, something only monks in caves or sages in forests can touch. But the truth is, it begins here, in the smallest acts. When you choose kindness instead of anger, you taste a drop of it. When you let go of a grudge, you feel a breath of it. When you sit in stillness and realize you are not your thoughts, you glimpse its horizon. Nirvana is not a place. It is a way of seeing. It is the end of illusions that bind us. It is the realization that you are never truly separate, never truly lacking, never truly chained. The chains were stories. The prison was clinging. The door was always open. To walk this path is to walk home to yourself, not the self of ego, but the self that is no self the vast. Open awareness that holds all things without grasping. To understand nirvana is one thing, but to live toward it is another. The mind clings by habit, like a hand that is gripped too tightly for too long. It reaches for comfort, for recognition, for certainty. Again and again, it builds walls around me and mine. The practice is not to fight the hand, but to soften it, to notice the grip, to breathe, to open. Slowly, the habit shifts. Slowly, the clinging fades. This is why the Buddha emphasized mindfulness. Awareness is the lamp that shows us the grip in real time. We notice when craving arises, when anger flares, when fear whispers. We see them clearly, not as enemies, but as passing conditions. And in that clarity, we are no longer owned by them. We can choose to release. With practice, release becomes natural. Imagine a child holding a toy tightly, afraid someone will take it. The hand cramps, the arm tires. Then the child realizes no one is reaching for it. The toy was never in danger. The grip loosens on its own. In the same way, when we see that nothing can be permanently ours, not wealth, not status, not even the body, we relax. We let go, not in despair, but in peace. This peace is nirvana. It is not escape. It is not annihilation. It is the freedom of no longer being enslaved by craving and fear. It is the joy of walking through life without chains. And here is the great secret. Nirvana is not only at the end of the path. It is present in every step of release. Each moment you choose compassion over anger, you taste nirvana. Each breath you take without clinging, you breathe nirvana. Each time you rest in awareness, without grasping at thought or identity, you are already living in its light. The final liberation may be vast, but its essence is here now, in the small acts of letting go. The Buddha often used simple metaphors. He said nirvana is like cool water on a hot day, like shade after walking in the sun, like rest after a long journey. It is not distant, not complicated, not reserved for a chosen few. It is the natural peace that arises when the fires burn out. To live toward nirvana is to live gently, to act without clinging, to love without fear, to serve without seeking reward, to die before you die, and in doing so, to discover a freedom that cannot be shaken. And when death finally comes, it is not a thief. It is a continuation of the same release. You set down the final burden. You return fully to the vast openness that was always here. This is not something to fear. It is the natural flowering of the path. To live this way is to live awake. And as you listen now, perhaps you feel a whisper of it already, the lightness in the breath, the spaciousness in the heart, the sense that beneath all the noise, peace has always been waiting. This whisper is the call of nirvana. It is not somewhere else. It is here. Not someday. Now that we have walked together through many doors. We began with the burden of stress and worry, the weight that modern life places upon our shoulders. We looked at the illusions of self, the masks of identity, the endless hunger to be right, the craving for comfort, the desire for legacy, the sting of insult, the ache of impermanence, and the storms of chaos. At each step, the Buddha's teachings offered not dogma, but freedom. Not commands, but invitations. Not promises of some distant salvation, but reminders of the peace available here and now. Each teaching pointed to the same truth. Suffering is not in life itself, but in our clinging. And freedom is not in running away, but in letting go. As we close this journey, let us gather the threads together. Stress arises because we hold life too tightly. Identity hurts because we forget we are fluid, not fixed. The need to be right poisons connection, while the courage to release pride brings peace. Comfort lulls us into weakness, but intentional discomfort builds quiet strength. Legacy tempts us with illusions of permanence, but presence reveals the only mark that matters. Insults sting when we take them personally, but the empty boat shows us how to let them drift away. Impermanence can frighten us, but when we see the cup as already broken, gratitude fills our days. Chaos will always come, but the eye of the storm reminds us that stillness is possible even in the heart of it. And finally, nirvana, the great release, calls us to live each moment with the gentle freedom of letting go. What do these teachings mean for you now, in your life, in this very breath? They are not meant to be admired like distant stars. They are meant to be lived. They are not lofty ideals, but practical step-small, daily choices. Breathing with awareness, speaking with kindness, pausing before reacting, noticing enough, letting go of what you cannot control, forgiving before it is too late. Each act is a seed. Each seed grows into the tree of peace. And here is the beautiful truth. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to master every teaching at once. The path is walked one breath at a time, one step at a time. Some days you will stumble. Some days you will forget. That is part of the journey. Each time you remember, each time you return, each time you choose awareness again, the path opens before you. So let this not be an ending, but a beginning. Let this be the moment you choose to live more lightly, more gently, more awake. Let this be the moment you put down one burden, even a small one. Let this be the moment you whisper to yourself, peace is possible, here and now. And remember, you are not alone. Every human heart struggles with the same illusions, the same cravings, the same fears. Every human heart also carries the same potential for freedom. As you practice, you do not only free yourself, you shine a light for others. Your calm becomes their calm. Your compassion becomes their shelter. Your presence becomes their reminder. In this way, the practice ripples outward, touching lives you may never know. So take a breath now. Feel it rise. Feel it fall. This is life. This is enough. This is the doorway to freedom. Step through it, gently, courageously, fully alive.